Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. So today I'm going to look through my reading stats for 2024, look at my reading goals for 2024 and see how well or not I did with them, and we'll set some reading goals for 2025. So to start with, we'll look at some of the stats on Storygraph. I always link in my videos in the description box my link to my Storygraph account, so you can always follow me or add me as a friend on there if you would like to. So I read a total of 126 books in 2024. Storygraph actually tells me two different figures. In one place it's 126, in one place it's 127. I think it's actually 126 because I think one got recorded twice by mistake. So I read 126 books. I think last year I read maybe 108 books. So it's nice to read a few more. Not that I ever set a numerical reading goal, but I just want to read all the books, so it's good to read more books. In terms of my moods on Storygraphs, this is quite interesting. I think the top moods for me are always the same every year. So on this graph, as you can see, my top moods for my reading were dark, mysterious, reflective, emotional and tense. But what is quite interesting is then in the red we've got funny, and in the sort of light pink, light-hearted. So I'm pretty sure funny and light-hearted, like you can never see those colours on that graph normally for me. They're like tiny little slivers at the end. So that is interesting. Maybe my reading has been slightly lighter than normal. We won't look at all of these, but we'll look at the genres. So I mean, some of these are not really genres, are they? But anyway, so the top genre I read in 2024 was literary, followed by mystery. Mystery is always going to be up there because it's my favourite kind of book. Then contemporary, then LGBTQIA+, and then horror. So horror, the last couple of years I have been, I think, getting into horror a little bit more. It's something I've really been enjoying, dipping my toe into a little bit. And then if we look at my average rating for 2024, that was 3.44 stars. Last year, I think it was like 3.42, so very, very similar. That's fine. I mean, a 3-star for me means I liked it. It's a definite thumbs up. 4-star means I loved it. And 5-star is like, get out the balloons, you know, and celebrate. It's unheard of, really. Last year, I only had 5 stars, not including rereads. I have done a video with my favourite books of 2024, which should be out already, so we'll link that down below. And then I want to have a look at my year in review on Storygraph, because there was something, I can't even remember what it was, but there was something in there that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so here it is. So on Storygraph, they give you a mood map of your reading over the year. So if you're reading lighter books, the graph is like higher up and it's the pale, it's like a yellowy colour. And then when you read darker books, the line is lower and it's like a dark brown. So I'll insert that graph here. As you can see, for some reason, January started off quite light and then got gradually darker and darker, which is as I would expect. And then there's like a little sentence that Storygraph has used to sum up my reading in 2024. It says, "You explored the shadows of the human psyche, followed cryptic trails of secrets, and engaged in introspective musings." And that all sounds delightful to me. So those are the Storygraph stats. Also, I DNF'd 48 books in 2024. So my DNF rate for 2024 was around 27%. Now that's actually quite low for me. My DNF rate, since I've been tracking it for the last few years, is normally around sort of 32-33%. So 27% is a little bit lower. What's the reason for that? I do wonder if part of it could be because I didn't read that many prize books that year, so last year. So I maybe read a couple from the Women's Prize, maybe a couple from Booker, but I think I didn't really pick up that many as I would normally do. I would normally probably try more of them and DNF a lot of them, so that may be why that DNF figure is slightly lower. I have done a separate video of all my DNFs of 2024. I don't know what order these videos are going out, so I'll link it down below if I can. And there will be more on DNFs a bit later in this video. So if we have a look back at my goals for 2024, so I had a goal that I wanted to reread at least 10 books. I do really like rereading, and it's something that I've always enjoyed doing. Last year I reread 9 books, so I didn't quite meet the 10, but I didn't do too bad. Although 4 of those 9 I read for book clubs, so not exactly like me seeking them out as I really want to reread this, if you know what I mean. So the ones I reread for book clubs were The Lighthouse by Alison Moore, Misery by Stephen King, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex, and then I also reread Little Women, Alex by Pierre Lemaitre, Notes on a Scandal by Zoe Heller, We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler, and Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. So that reread goal was almost met. That was all right. Then I wanted to read some short story collections, so I have a short story shelf here. Well, so it's kind of like half of this shelf. It's a little bit of a mess at the moment, to be honest, but I have a number of short story collections up there, and I do really enjoy reading short story collections. So I think I said I wanted to at least read some every month. I read 9 short story collections in total last year, which is pretty good. Only 3 were ones that I actually owned. The rest were obviously from the library. So that's not too bad, but I maybe need to, and actually saying that, I have 2 that I'm in the actually 3 that I'm still in the middle of right now. So that's not too bad. Another goal was to complete the Read Good prompts from Ben Reads Good. So Ben devised 12 prompts, 1 for each month of the year. I did complete them. I didn't necessarily complete them all in the right month, largely because I think there was a couple that I DNF'd and then had to find something else, or I went back retrospectively and was like, oh, I read that book, that'll count for that prompt. So did I complete? I did complete it, didn't necessarily do it in the right months. I'm going to say that counts. And then the final goal. Okay, I said I want at least 50% of the books I pick up to be from my owned books, so from my physical TBR. And when I did my goals video last year, I had 151 books on my physical TBR. And I actually said, and I completely forgot I said this, so I worked out that if I read 5 books from my physical TBR every month, I mean, what was I thinking? 5 books from my physical TBR every month. That'd be 60 over the year, leaving 91 books on my TBR, physical TBR. And DNFs count towards that, because if I pick up a book from my physical TBR and DNF it, I'm going to unhaul it, so it counts as a book getting removed from the physical TBR. So the previous year, about 2/3 of my books came from the library and about 1/3 came from my shelves. So I wanted half to come from my shelves. I went in the other direction. About 3/4 of the books I picked up last year came from the library. About 1/4 came from my shelves. So clearly I didn't meet that goal. However, there are some factors that you need to consider. First of all, I joined a new library last year. I joined Liverpool Library. I don't know why I've never done it before, and it's really good. And I just keep getting loads of books from there. So that is not my fault, that's the library's fault. My physical TBR at the moment, I counted it up the other day, is around 115. So I went from 151 to 115, which sounds pretty good. Part of what that is I did a big try a chapter video last year. I'll try and remember to link that below. And I think I tried, I want to say 50 or 60 books from these shelves and unhauled a lot of them. Did I unhaul, was it even as much as 30 maybe? It was a lot of books that I unhauled. and so those weren't included in the red figures or the DNF figures because I just decided to unhaul them. So that definitely helped with reducing some of the numbers on the physical TBR. Although I did not meet that goal. So on to my reading goals for 2025. I've got 4 goals. First goal is I want to complete the Read Good prompts again from Ben Reads Good, and some of the prompts are same as last year, some of them are new. I will, if I remember, link to Ben's announcement video so you can go join in if you would like to. And there is a challenge on Storygraph as well. The Read Good challenge is set up on Storygraph so you can record it all on there really easily. So I'm going to try and fulfill as many of the prompts as I can with books from my physical TBR, and haven't had a look at it. I think I can do that for 8 prompts. A lot of them will be, I'll have lots of choice from these shelves. I think there's going to be 4 prompts that I'm probably going to have to get from the library, which is okay. My next goal is I want to read some classics. Now I did read 8 classics in 2024, which was all right. I'll tell you what they were now. I did a reread of Little Women. I read A Christmas Carol, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Beetle by Richard Marsh. I reread A Study in Scarlet. I read The Well of Loneliness, The War of the Worlds, and The House on the Borderlands. That was by William Hope Hodgson. So 8 classics is actually not bad for me. I've come up with a list of 7 that I would quite like to get to in 2025. With classics, I feel like I need to be in the mood for them, because there's no point forcing myself to try and read a classic. If I'm really not in the mood, I will just DNF it. But these are the ones that I would sort of like to prioritise. So we have Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I've only read A Christmas Carol and Oliver Twist before. That was years ago. I do think if I'm going to like any Dickens, it's probably going to be Great Expectations. It just sounds like a very me book, and I've just noticed this morning that the library has a reading group set of Great Expectations, so I might force the group to read that with me. Villette by Charlotte Bronte, because the only Charlotte Bronte I've read is Jane Eyre, which I really do enjoy. The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. I've read Desperate Remedies and Jude the Obscure, and I want to read probably all of Thomas Hardy's works. I know my dad read The Mayor of Casterbridge a year or 2 ago and really liked it. So I think that's the one I want to get to next. Oh, I actually own some of these books, so let me just get them. So we have The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, which I believe is one of the earliest examples of detective fiction. I've read at least one short story by Wilkie Collins, which was called A Terribly Strange Bed, and I really, really liked it. So I do want to try out one of his novels. I also would like to read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I don't think I've ever read this before. This is one of those books that I'm not quite sure about, because I feel like I could have read it when I was younger, but I don't think I did. I really, really like the Disney film, Alice in Wonderland. It's probably the only Disney film I liked as a child, and that's probably because it's really weird. Another book I would like to read is Uncle Silas by Sheridan Le Fanu, which is Victorian Gothic mystery thriller, and it just sounds like my kind of thing. And then there was originally only 6 books on this list, and I realised only 1 was by a woman, so I've thrown Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte into the mix as well. I have tried to read this before a long, long time ago. I can't remember if I got to the end or if I DNF'd, but I remember finding it really hard going and just struggling to follow it, struggling with the language. But I feel like on paper Wuthering Heights should be a book I really like. It's super gothic, it's about horrible people, it's about obsession. It sounds like my ideal book, so that's that. So I mean, will I get to them all next year? I don't know. I'd like to get to at least 4 of those, but we'll see. Okay, so goal number 3 is to read more works in translation. So last year I read 15 works in translation, which I think accounts for about 11% of my reading. I feel like I used to read more books in translation, and that might be partly because I used to subscribe to a book subscription service where I get a couple of second-hand books every month, and the genre category that I went for was world literature. So some of those books would be written in English from elsewhere around the world, but a lot would be translated. And so I just had a lot of translated books on my shelves. I don't subscribe to them anymore, only because of space and money. But I do want to read more translated fiction in 2025. So this shelf here, so from like here to here, that's all translated. So there's 15 books there. I know there's 2 more up there and 3 on this TBR trolley that are translated. So I own 20 translated books on my physical TBR. And there's bound to be some that I get out the library as well. So that should be hopefully a reasonable goal to meet, to increase. So I read 15 last year, so read more than that basically. Then the final goal is to do with reading from my shelves. Of course, that's the goal. So to put this into context, I'm someone who's quite happy to be surrounded by books that I haven't read. But the issue is that I don't have that much space. I only really have these bookshelves here behind me. And when I read a book, if I think I might if I really enjoyed it, if I think I'm going to want to reread it, then I'll keep the book. If not, then I'll unhaul it. But I'm running out of space for my owned books that I've read and want to keep. So ideally, I'd like to convert one of these shelves from physical TBR to owned books. So at the moment, all this tall shelf here is physical TBR. The front, well, that's a bit of a mix, but the front layers here are physical TBR, as is obviously some of this trolley. This is double stacked, so the stuff at the back I've read, and the stuff on the very bottom shelf that you can't see I've read. But I need more space for my read books, so I would like to convert one of these shelves, like probably this one that you probably can't quite see, to owned books. There's about 25 books on one of these shelves. So I would like to, I guess, reduce my physical TBR by 25 books. That feels a little bit ambitious, but that's what we're going to say. So at the moment I have 115, like give or take. So if I get it down to around 90, that would be really good. Like if I think about this too much, then it starts to stress me out, because I feel like the more books you read, the more books I'm going to enjoy and want to keep. And then, but space is limited. So what happens when then I've run out of that shelf? Like, where's it end? Where are the books going to go? But that is an existential crisis for another day. But it does stress me out. But anyway, so if I can reduce my physical TBR from about 115 to 90, I'll have more space for the books that I've owned and want to keep. It feels doable, but obviously any books that I buy this year or acquire will offset that. I don't buy that many books. I possibly will buy less than I have done, because I do have access to another library, and Liverpool Library seems to be really good for like a little bit more niche books, like from independent presses and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's the goal. Reduce my physical TBR by around 25, so I can have more space for my owned books. Okay, there we go. It's Jennifer from the future here to say that there was another DNF stat that I meant to talk about that linked in with my final goal of reading books from my shelves. So my overall DNF rate for 2024 was 27%. And I've broken that figure down by library books and books that I've owned. So my DNF rate for all the library books that I picked up last year was 26%. My DNF rate for all the books that I owned that I picked up last year was 44%, which is kind of ridiculous. Of all the books I picked up from my shelves to read last year, almost half of them I DNF'd. Now I think one of the main reasons for that is because I do have a lot of books on my shelves still from when I had a book subscription, so a lot of those books on there are not books that I've specifically sought out myself. I've also got quite a few, I'm just looking over at the shelves now, a few books that have sort of been passed on to me by different people. So, you know, they're not full of books that I've gone out and bought full price for myself, is what I'm saying. Even books that I have bought myself, quite often I've bought from charity shops, like £1, so it's not like it's a great investment. So it's not like I'm spending full price on all these books and DNFing almost half of them. But it does mean that there's quite a lot of books on there still, actually, which, you know, I've not necessarily set out, you know, that I want to read myself. So there may be quite a lot of those books that I do DNF when I do pick them up. Back to the video. So those are the goals for 2025. Let me know what your goals are. If you have any reading goals for 2025, I'd really be interested to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.